Warning: this podcast episode discusses sensitive topics, including mental health, abuse, and suicide. The content may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling, please consider seeking support from a mental health professional or contacting a crisis helpline in your area. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Heart to Mic podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Chirono. Here we celebrate the power of authentic conversations, and together we'll explore our challenges, emotions, and growth through powerful storytelling. We have been in the era and conversation of how to improve ourselves, how to make better decisions, how to navigate your 20s basically. And I think the most important one that I've come to also appreciate and recognize that is a huge part of and a crucial role in our adulting and, in our lives generally is setting boundaries, guys. Setting boundaries. And I don't think boundaries are there to what's it called? Separate you from people, but it's there to also help you accept and to basically know what you can accept and what you can't accept in relationships, and also to help you foster healthy relationships at that. Because if you're constantly being stepped on or stepping on the other person and not being able to articulate what you like and what you don't like, then at the end of it all, you end up having very unhealthy relationships. It is important to know that boundary setting is also an act of self-love in a way. It is for you to be aware of the things that you know you are incapable of accepting and the things that you know you're capable of accepting. So there are a couple of things that I've picked up and written down. And I think number one is to understand what boundaries are. Boundaries are basically like set guidelines or just like a parameter on things you can accept with your time, with your energy, in your relationships. It's for you to set a clear line of what you can and not accept. At the end of the day, I think all these things are for the betterment of our relationships and for those people around us. Boundaries are not there to separate you from experiencing love in your friendships or anything. If anything, they're there to help you foster healthier relationships within your life, in all aspects of your life. And to know what you can accept and what you can't accept, because I think that's a big deal. But you can also know and understand what your boundaries are based on the experiences, because you will know that something has crossed a line. You know, when someone say umeenda sana, hapo umeenda sana. There's a comment a production crew has made here, and I'm just like, hapo umeenda sana. And that can be obviously in a humorous way in this setting, but you'll know once you have a level of discomfort when certain things are said, certain things are mentioned, there are certain places that have been picked on, maybe an action that someone has taken, something that they've said that does not sit well with you. And that for me warrants or makes me aware that there's a boundary maybe that I need to set, or that there's something I may need to deal with to counteract the discomfort that I'm facing with this thing. So to be able to understand that you setting this boundary is not a bad thing. I think people, there's also a throwing around of, I'm just setting my boundaries, I'm just setting my boundaries, when sometimes it's just plain disrespect, but also when you know that this may affect how you view yourself and how you feel about yourself and the things that you value, then that is an act of protecting yourself. It's an act of care. It's an act of love. It's an act of respect for yourself and for those people around you. So why are boundaries important, especially as part of growth? I think I want to give an example of African settings. I've grown up in an environment where, and I think most of us have grown up in environments, especially in our families, where you cannot say no to your family. I've actually learned in this season that you can. And I've recently come to a point where I am able to vocalize the things that I can and cannot do. I think when we are all growing up as adults, people have different priorities, people have different schedules, people have different needs, different wants, different expectations from the world and even from each other. And I found that unfortunately our parents condition us to thinking that because this is your family, because this is your sibling, because this is your this is your brother, your sister, your parent, that you're not allowed to have a contradictory opinion or to say no to the things that they've asked you to do, whether in agreement or not. For instance, I think there have been a lot of times when I've been asked to probably drop the things that I've prioritized on that day to be present for another member of the family. And I've also made it very clear that regardless of the fact that this situation is happening to them, I can only accommodate them at my own time, and at a time also that I am available as well. I will not drop the priorities or the plans I had for my day to accommodate this thing. And also, you setting the boundary does not mean you care any less about these people just because you said no in this moment and ask for a different time to be able to avail yourself. I think there's a lot to do. I think even in the last two episodes that you've watched with Ruby, there's a lot of conditioning that we have based on our African backgrounds, our parents, our families, our society, cultures, all etc. that always ongelesha mzazi wako in a certain way, and that can also mean you can't say no to a parent, you can't say no to this. And I think that's also what leads to the pattern of constantly paying your family black tax, all these things, because you feel like you're obliged to be doing these things. I think when you start practicing it in your home, in the relationships that you have, and the close-knit relationships that you have as well, it is able to set precedents and to also spill over to other relationships that you have. And also at the end of the day, when you set boundaries, it's like a time of reflection, because when you say no, you'll sit down and be like, oh, I've actually said no because this thing is important to me and I am prioritizing this, as opposed to people pleasing, because saying yes is just a way of people pleasing. To be honest, I think all of us struggle with taking up engagements, taking up work things, taking up activities, and making ourselves available for things just because we are afraid of saying no. We are afraid of, quote unquote, disappointing this other person. And again, who is on the driver's seat? Is it the need to please people, or is it the need to please yourself? Again, all these things circle back to the relationship we have with self, and also the plans and the things that we want to do for ourselves in the future. Great. Okay. So I think a huge point for me is understanding where I need boundaries. I realize that for me personally, the place where I struggle with in regards to setting boundaries is within family, or the context of family, or relatives generally. Oh, but also for the relatives, hapo nimeenda sana because I'm actually close to my cousins. Unajua tuko kwa hiyo family setting yenye my cousins atuongei. Watu wamejam. Naona ni kama umejam sana. You understand? But where is it that you need to set boundaries? Where is it that you found yourself allowing people or allowing situations to overpower the need to say no? You understand? Like, is it in the friendships because there's a need for you to keep these friends and you think that if you say no, there's a fear of losing them? That could be one. It could be you've always been a yes man in your family because either you're the last born, and out of like just where the hierarchy of which you are born, automatically, si last born zondu tumwa kina sisi. Last born zonaambiwa hebu endea ki, endea maji, endea nini. And then you become an adult and they think they can do it the same way. It doesn't happen like that. I think because I am a last born, literally hata remote ikiwa pale ni mimi ndo nitatumwa. But now we are adults. All of us are adults. I have a different life. My siblings have different lives. My mom has a different life. And I found that sometimes the things that they may not able to fulfill at the time, they pass down the responsibility to me. And therefore, it feels like I cannot say no. So I've realized for me, the environment that most importantly that I need to practice the act of setting boundaries has been at the core my family. I have found that through fostering those healthy relationships and healthy boundaries within my family, it spills over to my friendships, it spills over to my work, to knowing my worth, and etc. So identify where you need to set boundaries. I think it's very important to know that maybe in a certain aspect of your life, haujiheshimu. And that's just what it is. You understand? Wakisemanga hashtag jiheshimu bitch is for real. Like, jiheshimu bitch, I think for me, comes from, even like in toxic relationships where someone keeps coming back to you and you keep taking them back, and then you realize, actually, I need to set a boundary. For me, it is that. It starts with that. Another boundary that I've set is that I cannot engage in activities on a Sunday evening when I know I have to be in the gym tomorrow at 5 a.m. So if at all you want to see me, or you want to make plans or arrangements with me, then you'll have to coincide with my schedule. I don't also engage in activities that run past a certain time. Why? Because I have to be in bed at a certain time, and therefore I set boundaries around my sleeping schedule. I've also set boundaries around money. You just can't be using, asking, sending, or spending my money or being entitled to my money in a certain way, because again, like even Ruby said in the last episode, you have genuinely worked hard for this money. So you need to be able to set clear money boundaries within the people maybe that you're responsible of, or the people that you're in close proximity of that may likely borrow you money or may want your assistance financially in a way. Another place that I'm setting boundaries is with men. And I think that's a very important one. I think I've become very vocal these days with knowing when to say this does not work for me. I actually don't like how you said that. Please don't never do that again. It's just a practice thing also. I think the more I set these boundaries, or the more vocal I am with this boundary setting, the more I'm able to do it easily. I think I've said it in the last episode of the last season that no is a full statement, and I found and made peace with the fact that I can say no and I don't need to explain myself, because again, my schedule, the things that are of priority to me may not necessarily be of priority to you, and that's also okay. So how do you communicate your boundaries? I think, like I said, I assume that boundaries need to be set in such a stern way. Like you need to be clearly set to the point. You almost need to have a certain tone for people to take you seriously. But imagine, you can still deliver these boundaries and communicate these boundaries with grace, especially if they're people that you're communicating with are family, friends, or people that you just care about. For instance, I wrote one and it says, sharing tips on how to communicate. Number 1, I appreciate your thoughts, but I'm not available for this at the moment. I appreciate this offer, but unfortunately it does not fit into my budget. I appreciate this thing, but no. I appreciate you inviting for me this thing, but it's last minute and unfortunately I cannot make it, because you don't even have to say because, you can just say unfortunately I cannot make it, full stop. It is just finding a way to be clear and precise while communicating this thing, but also maintaining a tone and a delivery of kindness as a baseline. Hey, I think this one is a bit sensitive for me, because there's a little bit of guilt that comes from setting boundaries. And I think for me, especially with people close to me, because I think, again, I go back to the frame of mind that I am hurting this person and I don't want to hurt them by saying no. It's not like unfair to anyone else other than yourself if you don't communicate this thing that you're not necessarily happy with. If anything, you'll be disappointing yourself at the expense of trying to please other people. Again, I think this has a lot to do with the African setting, how we've grown up, the things we've been fed, the information that we are privy to, our cultures, the tribes, and all these things where there are certain things that you cannot do because, it is a form of disrespect, etc. But I think we're in the era where we are trying to demystify these set notions and ideologies that they do not apply to our generation right now. For me to be able to be of peace at peace with myself and to know that I've made the right decisions, then unfortunately I have to say no to this thing, or I have to set a boundary with this thing. Even if in the moment it may upset you, I know that eventually you'd understand. I'll give a very personal if he watches this, he will know I'm talking about him. But anyway, it is what it is. Come and beat me. I live in my mother's house. But I had gone for a party with a man, and we arrived at this party together. And it was time for me to go home because the next day was Sunday and I wanted to go to church. And initially the plan was I will drop him or just we go home together. But I waited in the car, called twice, and this person did not pick up. And I literally just pushed to start and nikaenda. And the next day, this man has the audacity to say, that was not very demure of you, because demure was trending at the time. Nikamuliza sasa wewe. The thing is, there's expectations of the type of woman that you'd want to be with as a man, and you want that woman to be able to set boundaries, to be able to maintain her priority list regardless of the fact that you're a vital part of her life. And I asked him, so now if you are looking at me as a contender of whether you want to marry me or not, yani niko kwa waiting list, and I've set this boundary and I've told you that my faith, my relationship with God is more important than you keeping me waiting at the parking lot because I can wait. Would you not value or appreciate the fact that I'm able to stand on this ground, which is a priority in my life, and not place you like above or before it? And the answer was yes. And I said, there you go. So I have decided to set a boundary for myself. Unfortunately, it has made you upset, but there's nothing I'm apologizing for in this moment. I called you once, I called you twice, and for me, that's a boundary. If I called twice, nilisema kwa episode. Mara ya tatu, jeshimo. You understand? So I was like, called once, called twice, and I left in that moment, not because I didn't care. I left that moment because I felt like my time was being disrespected, and also my priorities for the next day were being delayed because I'm here waiting for someone else. And that for me was such a proud moment because I was still able to go home and I was able to go through the activities and the plans I had for the next day. So again, it may be uncomfortable for the other person, but the delivery, the intention, and if at all the basis of your relationship is love and care, they will understand. They will understand that this is something that is important to Chero. So in as much as I would love her company, in as much as I would love her presence, unfortunately, I will not see her in this season. Why? Because she has other things that she's doing. And that can only be manifested or be approached or be reached if these people have met themselves the same place, if not close to where you have met yourself in regards to your journey of self-love and self-development. So as you grow, I think I would also, encourage for you to grow with the people around you. If you're told you have you're going through therapy, encourage the people around you to go through therapy. If at all you're learning how to set boundaries, encourage them to set boundaries as well. So that all these things are happening concurrently with the people that you care about, and they're able to also learn what you're learning and practice what you're practicing within the friendship and within the relationship. I think that's very important. Now, boundaries in friendships and boundaries in relationships. I think when it comes to friendships, we almost assume that because you're my friend, you're obliged to be part of every single thing. You're obliged to support me in every single thing, which is, they're all expectations that we may have, even subconsciously, that because I'm a makeup artist, I expect all my friends to. No, I don't actually. I don't expect them to all procure me as a service provider if they have big events or deals or whatever. It is to expect that they would still support me regardless, even if they would prefer to use or procure someone else. It is to also find a way to have these conversations in regards to what expectations do you have of me in this friendship? And for me to tell you, okay, that one, I don't think I'll be able to do. I think that is beyond my emotional threshold. That is beyond my mental threshold. And I think maybe you can find another friend to fit in that need for you, but that still doesn't change the fact that I care about you. I recently started setting boundaries with my mom when it comes to the conversations that we have that may be especially emotionally heavy towards the end of the day. I would rather not engage with things that will have me sleep with a heavy heart, because I know the type of person I am. Nitakaa na nitawaza friend. Nitawaza na nitatengeneza story, and I will come up with conclusions, and I'll end up sleeping at odd hours of the night because I'm here. Again, we are still learning how to be empaths with boundaries, but I happen to be someone who genuinely carries a lot of care and carries a lot of emotion, and more often than not, I tend to carry people's burdens even without their knowledge or without their, placing of this weight. I find myself almost just putting myself in their shoes and figuring out, okay, so now what should I do? Should I do something else? Should I send more money? It's those things, those conversations, especially when it's around family or someone passed away. How do you think? I don't like having those conversations when I'm about to go to bed. I also want to be prepared for the conversations prior. I want you to be able to tell me, are you in a position to receive this? And it's as simple as, I think right now we are in a season in my friendships especially where the question is, do you have 7 minutes? And by that, it's like a code word for, do you have time to listen to me? I want to vent. Are you in the emotional space to receive this information? And if I'm in the emotional space to receive the rant or the venting, then I will say yes. If I'm not, then I'll say, kindly call me at this time tomorrow. I will have mentally prepared myself to receive this information and to be able to give you the perspective that you need. As opposed to be now, you call me and I'm just like, walai. Oh God, what? Crazy. I actually will engage if at all I have been prepared and I've been, allowed to make the decision whether I'm in a space to receive this information or not. Also, the roles that our parents play do not necessarily have to be the roles that we play. The things that our parents would do not have to be the things that we would do. If kama yeye amesema she will drop everything for this said aunt, doesn't mean I will drop everything for this said aunt. I think I've realized that sometimes African parents assume that when it comes to family, drop everything. But what if I'm in the middle of, again, maybe recording, or I'm signing a deal that is important to me and you want me to let this go because of something else? And more often than not, they may not see the weight of this goal or whatever you're doing in this moment as much as you do. Most people will not have this shared experience or the shared goal as you do. They may not see the vision the way you'd see them. And you have to make peace with the fact that realities are different. Even with the immediate family, they're different. And to set these boundaries is to practice. If you start today saying no, you start today saying this, and then you realize that there are certain emotions that you have when certain boundaries are crossed, and you're able to even fine-tune this boundary because of now the realization of the discomfort that you have once it is crossed. Now, I think maintaining work and life balance is something that I'm still figuring out, because I realize that sometimes I can take so much work-wise, and that sort of affects my relationships and my friendships because I'm sort of overwhelmed. I find a way to, like, especially in the last quarter, I think most of us as creatives don't really have a choice, but we're saying yes to quite literally everything. Like, yes to the podcast shooting, yes to the campaign, yes to the emceeing. Everything is a yes, because we're in the season where a lot of brands are investing in marketing. And this is a time when that work-life balance may be destroyed a little bit because we don't have the liberty to say no. At least we've not gotten to a space in our industry where you can say no with the anticipation of making money in January. I think it's just a thing where all of us are doing the content, the production, the investment of marketing right now in the last quarter, because a lot of people have also saved money towards, Black Friday or like just Christmas holidays and buying gifts for their families and friends. So it's a time that most people have money to spend. But outside of this last quarter, I know that when I reach a certain limit with my work, it will affect how I show up in my friendships. It will affect how I show up in my relationships, because I will have been I've been exhausted from work, that showing up in these other situations may be difficult. So to find a way to set boundaries with work and be like, okay, so for instance, if you say you want me to MC a gig from 5 to 6 p.m., it best be 5 to 6 p.m. It best be I know you know this wasanis who wakisema wana perform 3, wanakuja 3. Na ikisema inaisha 5. If you have not started your event, you'll go. We know of a proper rapper who did not perform recently because his time was wasted. And for me, I appreciate that. Why? Because you said you wanted me at a certain time. And because of the inconveniences that have happened on your end, it has nothing to do with me. I will leave. And I know there's instances where you can you can extend grace when there's familiarity and everything, but people will treat you how you treat yourself. People will step on the zones that you've already allowed them to step into. I think I was having a conversation with a hairstylist over the weekend when I was at a wedding in Naivasha, and he literally said that men do things, not just men, but I think human beings generally, but in this context he was referring to men, and he said men do things you allow them to do. If one day you say, umekuja home late, unakubali. The next day, they will come home late again. The next day, they will do this. That's why forgiving cheating, in my opinion, is setting precedents for them to do it again, because you show them what you can handle. You show them what you can say yes to, ideally. So even in as much as it may pain you to leave this relationship where your trust has been compromised, your respect has been compromised, it is the only way for you to know and attract better, by setting that boundary. So even with work and life, it's knowing when to leave, knowing when to get there, reading the room, and also just limiting the conversations. Because I think we're in an industry where sometimes we are carried away thinking that we are all boys, and now you start oversharing, and then kidogo your story is used in which circle. Find a way to have very surface level conversations that do not have anything to do with you or have any personal information that might be used against you in the event that it is, because we really don't know people's intentions. So even you sometimes, just close your mouth. Sometimes being quiet is also okay. So now, being an influencer, I think we're in this space. I think I have boundaries on social media as well. Honestly, you cannot come to my page and talk shit. And I think I've not said that vocally. I think it's an energy that I exude. I have not told anyone, don't comment anything. But I think on my page, almost kidogo, exudes this is not the place kind of energy. And I love that, and sometimes I don't like it as well because it almost makes you unapproachable. But my family, we are not discussing my family. We're not discussing my family life. We're not discussing my private life. We're not discussing my sex life. And if at all I produce any information within this category, I'm okay with you discussing this, but also you can discuss it in your WhatsApp groups with your girlfriends. Please do not do it here. And I remember there's a time an influencer, Dache, talked about comments that people make around weight. Because if these comments were made towards you, I'm sure you would not be happy about them. So how can you set boundaries with your audience in a way that is respectful, but also in a way that they understand this is just not a place to go? I also think with social media, I've set boundaries with the content that I consume. Even outside social media, I'm one person who does not watch horror movies. Hata mseme nini, hata iko imeproduciwa iko in the charts, like it is trending and you want to, I'm good, child, because mimi natalala usiku, sini mimi wewe si utalala after umeonyesha this movie na imeshika. Mimi sitalala because I know the damage that horror movies have caused to me, especially because of my childhood. My siblings used to force me to watch those movies, alafu usiku yote ninaota the whole movie, ninawika, I replace myself with one of the characters in the movie. And then I'm distorted for a couple of days. Why? Because I said yes when I actually wanted to say no. So even what I consume, I hate, if it's a lot of complaining, I hate going to social media and I'm consuming a lot of negative energy. Every single day on your stories, you're complaining. Every single day you're complaining. And I think I understand and want, especially influencers, to get to a space where they're vulnerable with their audiences. But also we're in this consumerism era where a lot of our decisions, how we live our lives and the things that we do have a lot to do with the information that we consume. So I try to limit that, especially in the first 3-4 hours of the morning. I'm not watching anything that would make me feel like, oh my God, I don't have the Range Rover. Fuck, I'm not a successful person. This person, you fungua social media and God, alikuwa Dubai jana, saya yako Maldives. Now you have low self-esteem because hukupelekwa Maldives. Ulipelekwa tu hapa Karatina. You understand? Like it's one of those things where I limit the amount of time that I am on social media. I have screen time on my phone as well, so that I'm not a slave to this thing. And it's a work in progress because I also realized my screen time has significantly increased, but I've set clear boundaries with myself. I've set clear boundaries with the relationship I have with these apps as well. Because at the end of the day, we are using them, yes, to make money, but they cannot be in control of us. And as much as I know cell phones have been made particularly for us to use them and spend our time there, it is just a boundary that I've set for myself and even in my schedule as well. Now, I think the value and the purpose of boundaries has a lot to do with just being able to live authentically. You cannot be a people pleaser and think that you're living in your truth. You're not. You're living in that other person's truth, by the way. If anything, you're in their story. Umejizama. Nimezama ndani ya bahari. Lakini si ya mapenzi yako, ni ya nini sasa? Ya boundaries zako, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I was going somewhere with that. But for you to live authentically, it means you have to be true to yourself. Things you like, things you don't like, things you can entertain, things you can't entertain. And that means you have to meet yourself. Like Ruby said, who's on the driver's seat as you're making these decisions? Is it because of pleasing the other person, or are you trying to please yourself? And I think I will also bring her here to maybe expound on this topic, but those are the things that I have picked up along the way. And even in this moment, I think I'm still learning to set boundaries within myself. I'm learning to communicate them also in a better way because, again, I've been known to be very harsh and very stern in my delivery, and I'm learning compassion in the moment to be able to set these boundaries, but with grace, to be able to communicate this with respect and allow myself to also get feedback in the process, especially in those relationships that are valuable to me. And it is a practice thing. It is a muscle you have to exercise. Every single day you have to remind yourself, okay, this is something that I was accepting before, but now I don't want to accept it anymore. So it's a pattern. And because your mind is conditioned to the thinking and the ways of life that you had before, accommodating a new set of rules, regulations, boundaries is going to be uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, it's a practice thing. Like the way in high school we used to do math papers all the time in preparation for the math exam, or just papers generally, or mock exams in preparation for KCSE or KCPE. It is for you to practice and get into the habit of doing this thing. It is like the gym. You will start, the first week will be tough, and then once you get into the habit of it, you will find discipline, you'll find some sort of like belonging, you'll find the things that you like, and you'll find the things that you don't like. Yeah. So if there's anyone who has any other ways that you can possibly practice boundary setting in a better way in the comment section, please let us know, and we'll be able to share and have conversations around the same. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is a short one, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us and rate us on these podcast platforms. We will be sure to see you on the next one. Love and light.